Possible illness. Even before Amy had come over to his house, Sonic felt like something simply wasn't quite right. His head had been aching, and his throat was a little sore. Not to mention, his nose had developed a slightly red shade. Still, the blue hedgehog wanted to make the most of his time with Amy. As clingy as she was, she still had a heart of gold and a sympathetic side, both of which she put to good use whenever he was unhappy, struggling, or otherwise needed a helping hand. At the moment, the two hedgehogs were on the couch in the living room, intending to watch something together. Something that was neither too girly for Sonic nor too boyish for Amy. However, as Sonic held the remote in his hands and scrolled through the variety of channels, a tickle found its way into his nose. His muscles scrunched a bit as he lowered his eyelids and held his breath, but in the end, the urge to sneeze was just too much for him to handle. Achoo! 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 Sonic sent his upper body forwards as he let out 3 sneezes, with the remote slipping out of his hands but landing harmlessly on the carpeted flooring. He then sulked, rubbing his nose slowly, almost weakly, with his fist. Amy looked at him, a worried expression across her face. She'd seen Sonic sneeze before, but now that she'd seen the redness surrounding his nose, she could tell something wasn't right. "Sonic, are you getting a cold?" "I don't know. Maybe." Sonic sounded a bit congested as he replied. He sniffled, but it didn't feel like any air was moving through his nostrils, which he then lowered his hand from. Amy frowned in concern as she reached her hand over to her boyfriend. She felt his forehead gingerly, noticing straight away that a fever was beginning. "You feel a little warm. Maybe you should go lay down," Amy suggested. Sonic shook his head, however. "No, I'm fine," he claimed, although she could tell he wasn't being sincere. "I just need a tissue." His hand reached over to the tissue box, waiting on the coffee table before the couch. Before he could pull a tissue out, however, the tickle in his nose returned, stronger than before. "Ah? Ha?" Sonic inhaled, his eyelids lowering as his nose twitched. At almost the same time, Amy felt a tickle in her nose as well. Before she could intervene, Sonic released another sneeze, a spray of saliva spurting out of his mouth into the air. Achoo! And almost as soon as he'd finished, Amy gave a sneeze of her own, sending a small stream of clear mucus oozing out of one of her nostrils. Ha-chew! The two then rubbed their noses with their index fingers, eyes halfway closed with looks of slight dismay upon their faces. And in near perfect unison, they found themselves telling one another, "Bless you." "Bless you." That was when Amy's eyes widened, feeling a mixture of realization and dawning comprehension. "Do you think we're both getting sick?" "It's possible." Sure enough, 2 small drops of clear mucus had begun to ooze from Sonic's nose, one emerging from each nostril. He sniffled sharply, bringing them back up for a brief moment before they slowly descended. He waved his hand a bit, however. "But don't worry, I'm sure we'll be fine." Amy wasn't so sure, however. She had caught cold before, be it from someone else or from simply not being careful enough, but she had never gotten sick at the same time as Sonic before. But if that was what was happening now, and considering the temperatures outside had been cooler than usual, then she might as well accept that it was possible. With a deep sniffle, Amy pulled a tissue out of the box and blew her nose, the edges of the tissue fluttering with her breath. She then pulled the tissue away, moving her arm beneath her nose to clean off any more mucus that might have remained. As she neatly folded the tissue and placed it in the trash bin close by, she could hear Sonic pulling out a tissue as well. "Huh?" Sonic gasped, his irises moving askew for a brief moment before he sneezed loudly into his tissue, blowing his nose at the same time. Achoo! Sonic sulked again as he wiped his nose with his tissue, cleaning off the strings of clear mucus that were escaping his nostrils. "Bless you, Sonic," Amy said, placing her hand on his shoulder. "Thanks," replied Sonic. He lowered his tissue from his face, then rubbed his nose with his forefinger. "On second thought, maybe we should lay down, just to be safe." Amy nodded in agreement, and before long, the two had made their way upstairs and into the bedrooms. Aside from Sonic's bedroom, there was also a guest room for Amy, and both rooms had an available box of tissues close to their respective beds. Once they'd blown their noses again and wiped them clean once more, Sonic and Amy allowed themselves to rest for the remainder of that evening. Hopefully it wouldn't be long before either of them were feeling better. The end.